Are you in need of some spiritual vitamin C? Well, I believe you came to the right place. My name is Kenya, and welcome to Spiritual Vitamin C, my podcast designed to fuel your spirit by feeding it the Word of God. So open up your spiritual medicine cabinet, your ears, eyes, and heart, and let's fill up on some spiritual vitamin C, which is truly the Word of God. Hello. This is Kenya from Spiritual Vitamin C, the podcast. I am back. This is Kenya from Spiritual Vitamin C, the podcast. Listen, y'all, I'm back. I am back. I keep saying that because I should have been back like 2 weeks ago for the follow-up to the last episode. But I hope you're having a really great day. I hope you're having an amazing week. I'm not sure if this is your Monday or if this is your Friday or if you're somewhere in between, but I wanted to say welcome to Spiritual Vitamin C, the podcast, and I'm back. So this is the second episode of season 2, and I'm excited because this is a follow-up episode to Christ, Crohn's, and Colostomy. So this is part 2. And I'm back. Okay. I wanted to say heads up, if you're listening to this audibly, you have the opportunity to now listen and look visually. The visual podcast is available on Spotify, or if you would like, you can go to my YouTube channel at Spiritual Vitamin C and you can visually see what you are listening to. Okay. So let's go. Let's go. So a lot has happened. We are like 2 weeks into February of 2022, and happy Valentine's Day, Galentine's Day, Palentine's Day. So that covers like everybody, right? And yeah, I hope you all are doing well and you're surviving and thriving. And let's just jump to it. So picking up where we left off the last time, I disclosed on season 2, the first episode of this season, that I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at an early age and ended up with a colostomy bag and talked about my journey. Today I'm going to deal with life with a colostomy bag. And if you noticed last episode when I talked about the colostomy bag, it was in past tense. That's because I no longer have the colostomy bag. But let me tell you, it was a journey. So I don't want to really do a recap, but diagnosed at 15 years old with Crohn's disease, leading up to the time of officially being diagnosed, it was very rough. Went to a series of emergency rooms, doctors, clinics, and no one was ever able to tell me what was wrong with me. And it led to some really, really rough days and months. And I just thought I was always going to live with that pain until I went to a hospital and they diagnosed me. They pulled me right in, and all of this happened around December. And so by the time I was checking to the hospital, it was just terrible. It was terrible because I was so young. It was terrible because my sister, who I was living with at the time, I couldn't be with her. She had to handle her own business, and now I'm stuck in the hospital, and it was all around Christmas. I know. But let me tell you, God really came through. And I talked about that. So if you want to know how God came through when I was 15 years old and I just felt so alone, please go back to the first episode. A couple months leading up to my 18th birthday, the flare up of Crohn's disease, it began to ramp up. And I'll never forget the day of my 18th birthday. someone gave me a present. I was so ill at that time that my cousin, bless her soul, she ended up taking me, driving me to Children's Hospital and checked me in the day after I turned 18. It was like wild. And from there, I it was just this long road of your intestines are so diseased that we're going to have to do a resection. We're going to have to cut a piece of your intestines out. So you back up. And then they told me that if for whatever reason it fails, like it doesn't work, we're going to have to take you back in and do a colostomy back. So I knew, like I knew that that was never going to happen and it was going to be okay. And it never entered into my mind that that was actually a possibility. So when it came around that we now need to go back into emergency surgery and do a colostomy back, I was fighting. I was like, I don't think so. I had a life to live. I had plans, but yeah, God knows everything. So going through the surgery, I was so ill, came through the second emergency surgery, woke up in the ICU. I was there for about a week. This has been a long time ago, but I know that I ended up getting like super ill on top of all of the other stuff that was going on with just the two surgeries and, like feeling like one foot was in hell, one foot was in the grave. It was just crazy. And then on top of that, and just other things were going on in my life. And so I remember one particular time when I woke up, because I was in the ICU for a week, I woke up and I saw my sister and her husband standing over me praying. And I'm grateful for my sister because like it's been like, and so this is another sister. It's been in certain like points in my life that she's been there like very strategically. God has had her there very strategically. And I think about how she would, when I used to live at, another city, she would come and pick me up when I was a teenager. And then I would go to church with her. It's kind of amazing because the very church that I would visit is the very church that I ended up getting saved at. It's kind of like full circle, right? So she's always been there at these very strategic places in my life. And the reason why I ended up going back to that church is because I remember when the Lord began to draw me and started dealing with me, and I started having these series of dreams. And it was that was even wild how I came to the Lord. God knows how to deal. He knows how to draw. So even with that happening, I just remember she would like either call me to see how I was doing and just some other things. But when it was time for me to make up my mind where I wanted to worship, I was considering going to a whole different reformation because I just remember thinking I needed to go this way. But then it was kind of like in the back of my mind, I thought, let me go to that other church because that's where my sister is. That other church is where I yet worship. So she's been very strategic in my life at very specific times. So when I wake up, at one particular, because I was in the ICU for a week. So when I wake up one of those days, I remember she was over me praying, her and her husband. And that whole week is kind of even still like a blur. But I remember it was extremely difficult just getting up out of bed. Everything about that whole week was hard. And so the Lord brought me through, and I would connect with ostomy nurses where their specialty, they're registered nurses, but their specialty is dealing with patients who have colostomy bags. So they're called ostomy nurses. So I connected with an ostomy nurse, and then the doctors would have me connect with a young person because I mean I was like 18 at the time, so I was, and it was I went into the hospital one day after I turned 18, so I was reeling like so much life stuff was happening, and then to have to go through this emergency surgery, and now you're like your whole life is changed. So I come out of this emergency surgery, and I get an ostomy nurse, and now I'm on different meds, and now my whole life is different. This is I don't recognize this life. So now they hook me up, the doctors and work, social workers and whoever else was in the midst, hooked me up with a young person who had a colostomy bag in hopes of helping me. It didn't really help. I was just devastated. Like, I had plans to not be living where I was living. I was going to LA. I was going to like go to Hollywood. I had plans and my whole life changed. I went through it was emotional trauma, it was mental trauma, it was not only physical trauma, it was spiritual trauma, it was everything. I remember just going through like not feeling like a woman, not feeling like a person, because not only did I have a little bit of my intestines cut out of me, which you kind of feel like something was stolen from you. But on top of that, now you have this colostomy bag. And now it's not only things that are within you that you can't see, this trauma to your body, but now it's stuff that you have to look at every day of your life. And let me tell you, I used to think to myself, I'm not a woman anymore, because it just took everything away from me. And let me tell you, it took God to walk me through this stuff. This is real. So as I'm going through my life now, trying to figure out what it is, how do I maneuver in life with the colostomy bag? How do I go to the bathroom? How do I how am I moving when I'm at a person's house and I have to go to the bathroom, when I'm out in public spaces and I have to go to the bathroom, and you hear the sound of the bag when I'm unloosening it to dump into the toilet. Let me tell you, I, I'm going to stop there just because it's the podcast episode and I don't want to go too deep. Um, I think if it was like a one-on-one setting, depending on who I was talking to, I would go a little bit deeper. But I think I'll stop right there. A lot of mental stuff happened. And I had to eat differently. I felt different. It was like, oh, Kenya came back from, oh, okay, Kenya came back from the hospital, but I was not the same Kenya. And I know that I said that in the first episode, that when I came from the city I was living in back to my city, and then I went to high school, I may have looked the same, but I wasn't the same. Same old friends, right? But I wasn't the same. So you have to understand that everything was now building, because not only was I coming through, I started off my high school years with with Crohn's disease and flare up and just a lot of stuff. And now I'm coming out of high school with like some more stuff added to it. I may look the same on the outside, but now more trauma has now occurred. And I was devastated for a very long time. You know, uh, did it help reaching out to someone who had a colostomy bag? Maybe a little, because of that commonality, but the truth was not really, because they weren't in my city. It would have been different if I'd have had like a support group that I could have gone to in my city, but that wasn't there. So I figured it out by myself. I figured it out by myself. Um, I didn't have people around me to tell me what to do. I figured it out on my own. And I'm grateful, because in those times, you really find out what you're made of. And that was before I knew God. But I look back, God was like, the grace of God was there the whole time walking me through. God is real. And let me tell you, when you can't walk, God will pick you up and help you through. And that was my life. I learned it. Know that it was very traumatic and God got me through it. And as I look back, I'm grateful. Um, I would have never wished Crohn's disease on anybody or myself, but because I was diagnosed and because I had to deal and because it got colostomy bag and all this other stuff, I'm grateful that God took ashes and gave me beauty and gave me a, a great personality. I love to laugh. I love to crack jokes. And a lot of that is because so much pain, so much hurt, and it can either make you angry or God can help you see that life is beautiful and life is worth living. So as I would go back to school and go to college, it was a lot for me. I'll be really honest. When I would get around people, I'd be very, very self-conscious because sometimes if like I knew how to dress, like I would wear layers so that it would muffle the sound of the bag because I would say, if you don't know what a colostomy bag is, just go onto YouTube. And so I would say just Google or look up like the ins and outs of a colostomy bag. And what you see is it's a bag that empties feces into it from the stoma, which is an opening in your abdominal wall, and they pull a portion of your intestines through. And so the doctors told me it was rerouting my plumbing. And so when, number two, it would dump out into the colostomy bag. So I had to figure out a way to muffle the sound because it was a plastic bag. And so, I became very adept at like knowing how to dress. When I would go to the bathroom, I would always go to the handicap stall because it was the biggest. And that was usually like the one that was like way out of the way, because I was very, like when I told you, I endured some mental anguish and trauma. I did, because all I thought was you can hear it, you can see it. And so I always made a beeline to the handicap bathroom stall. And I was always mindful if I went over to a friend's house, and I was mindful everywhere I went. Let me tell you, it was like I was mindful. And yet I learned to live with it. And I didn't let it drown me. I accepted it. It took a while, but I accepted it. And then I became protective of my stomach in a beautiful way. I was grateful that I didn't die. I was grateful that God allowed doctors to save my life. I was so sick, the doctor, now they will probably never say this. I think they lied to me because they said that the surgery, it wasn't right. The first one just didn't work. And so we're going to have to take you in and do a colostomy bag. And they said, it's only going to be for a year. You're only going to have it a year, and then you're going to be better. And so the year came, and when I went back to the doctor, he was like, no, you're still not good enough. And so 20 years later, so I learned to love myself. I learned to love myself with a colostomy. I learned I learned that I am a woman, that the colostomy did not make me any less of a woman, but that took a journey. That took a journey with me getting saved, because I got saved not soon. I got saved very, very soon after. But let me tell you, a lot of healing had to take place. And we won't even the whole dating scene. I am painfully shy with regard to dating, right? And this is not a episode about dating. I just know when it comes to dating, I am extremely shy. So when you add that and you add the colostomy bag, and it was like extremely shy times 50. And so I just focused on my school and God, and The Lord helped me make it through. The year that I got a reversal of the colostomy, which is called a takedown. The year that happened, the beginning of the year started off really terrible, tumultuous for me because flare-ups started to occur. And I went to my special doctor out of town, and they said that you are not a candidate to do the takedown surgery, to have the colostomy bag come off. And like a couple of months passed. When they told me that, I was shattered. And then a couple of months passed. I used to work the night shift, and I remember I woke up and I said, "Oh my goodness, I think I'm going to die." I was so sick. Called my pastor and I told my pastor, I'm going to die. He said, "You're not going to die. You're not going to die." And so I ended up going to work. And then from there, I ended up getting super, super sick. I was off for like a month, maybe more. And who could have imagined that at the beginning of the year, it was like terrible. And then I would wake up one night and be like, "Pastor, I think I'm going to die." He's like, "You're not going to die." Ended up going to work that night. And let me tell you, it was by the grace of God I made it through. Ended up going to work. And then like, I went to my specialty doctor, and then they're like, your intestines look good. Let's go for it. And they were like, "We're going to do it. Let's do it next month." I was so shocked. It happened so fast. And I was like, "Oh, okay." But then it was like way late by like a month in like a week or something. And so I went down to the city and I went into the hospital, and I think I was there for like a week or two. And I like, oh my gosh, something that was supposed to only be a year ended up being 20 years, and they took it off. Like, let me tell you. And when I feel my stomach now, and there's no bags there, and the surgeon who did it, cleaned me up nice, and it looks really great. It's weird to say that, but it's true. She did an amazing job. God guided her hand, and I am grateful that I was able to not get stuck. And I know that's by the grace of God. I'm grateful that I was not angry. I'm grateful that God didn't let me stay angry. I should say that. I'm grateful that I come to realize that I'm a woman, that Crohn's disease didn't take that away, that having a chunk of your intestines taken out of you doesn't make you less of a woman. But I'm grateful that God brought me through that. I'm grateful that God brought me through the embarrassment of trying to figure out what bathroom stall I'm going to use, because I'm ashamed because I have this colostomy bag. I went through so much stuff. Being saved, loving God. I went through so much stuff. We would be going to like youth congress and AIM, and I'm trying to figure out who can I room with, because I don't want everybody to know that I have a colostomy bag. Let me tell you, it was a lot, and God brought me through all of it. God brought me through, and it seemed like when my amazing surgeon was like, "Let's go for it," it just seemed like it was nothing to say that. And like earlier that year, I was dejected when they told me no. How does it change that fast? How does it change when a month before I'm waking up and I'm telling my pastor I'm going to die? How does God, in the midst of me saying, "I think I'm going to die, Pastor," he said, "You're not going to die." How does it go from that to like 2 weeks later, let's go for it? God blows your mind every time. And it happened so fast, and I came through at flying colors, and the surgeon was amazing. The slight scar that's there is a constant, a beautiful reminder of where God has brought me from. Like, I never want to ever forget this time. Anything that I've ever gone through in life, I never ever want to forget it, because I want God to use it. I want it to be leveraged. Every single thing that I've ever gone through, I want it to be leveraged to help somebody else. I don't care how embarrassing, I don't care how painful, I want God to use it to bless somebody else. And so as I came through the surgery and as, things would get back to normal, it took a long time to get back to normal. And I'm talking about just the function of my GI system. It took a long time. I had to be careful with everything that I ate and drank, but I'm grateful that I'm here. As I look back over my life, I'm grateful that God helped me. So for those of you who are struggling with Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, which is kind of similar, struggling with a colostomy bag, whether it's new or you'll never get it off, there is grace for us. God's strength is real. The stuff that we'll never ever talk about, like the things that make you feel like less of a man or less of a woman. The things that you'll never bring to people because sometimes it cuts so deep. Know that God has you if you let him. I never want to forget. And if I can ever be a blessing to anybody, I want to be. So as you go through your week, remember that nothing is too hard for God. It doesn't matter if it's been 30 years or 10, or if it's been 50, God comes through every time. God doesn't forget, even if people do. So be encouraged. Go through your week and know that God is greater than anything that'll come upon you. Say that if you ever want to connect with me, you can hit me up on social, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube at Spiritual Vitamin C. And I would love to connect with you. Yeah, go through your week. Know that God can get you through anything. He will bear you up on eagle's wings. He will make our feet like hinds feet and set us on our high places. All right. So I think that's it. I stop here. It's kind of like a strange place to stop, but I'm going to stop here and say, if you have enjoyed this episode or perhaps another episode, please rate the podcast and please review, please subscribe, and please consider financially supporting. And I will see you next time. Please remember that life needs a dose of Christ. See you later. If you enjoyed this episode of Spiritual Vitamin C, please subscribe. I would also love it if you would rate it and leave a review. I look forward to seeing you next time. And remember, life needs a dose of Christ.